Hello. We
Hello.
are live with the one and only Richard Moore, LinkedIn guru. Um, but again, we like to ask people to introduce themselves because I'll speak all lofty and grateful and everything about you. So I'll let you tone it down a little bit, keep it
Oh,
real.
yeah, for the record, guru is not my word. If you choose to use it, that's fine. So yeah, I'm Richard Moore. I have my current focus is helping people get clients on LinkedIn. My background is 20 years in selling, 10 years in the corporate side in London, ultimately as a sales director, and then 10 years helping people do this. First on Facebook from 2013, then Instagram, and then from 5 years ago through LinkedIn. So the short version is everyone thinks they just need more impressions and more followers and more virality, and somehow they'll just make lots of money. But far better, I think, is to learn how to convert elegantly so that you have deals when you need them, as opposed to hoping it might all work out. And so the focus I have is sure, building your LinkedIn and being effective there, but importantly, what to say to engage with the individuals to help them decide that you're right to speak to and take that further to a deal. So it's a lot of fun doing that. And I get to meet people like you and enjoy your biscuits. This is the ultimate aim of the whole job, of course.
The end game.
Always, biscuits are always my end game.
So where's the fun in it?
For me, for me, the fun is just I've said before, like, this is my Netflix. I'm such a geek for this stuff. On my own, if there was no one around, if I was a billionaire, I would probably still do it. I really enjoy just helping people navigate those little tiny blind spots and the wording and so on that helps them understand what to do and say to really realize their potential. And I think that one of the most wonderful outcomes of doing this kind of thing is you have people who are really, really talented, who perhaps are quite frustrated because they're not getting, client acquisition, and they want to do this wonderful thing over here. And I'm not making them into a salesperson. I'm just teaching them what cues to look out for and how to word it so that people say, yes, actually, I'd like to learn more. And now you have them experiencing, exciting new things. And a really good example, last week, someone joined my group, and she, within a few days up to price and closed the client, and she's had her biggest, I think it's not just her biggest, but her first ever 5-figure month. And she's thrilled. And that's just such a lovely place to be, when she can continue being talented at her thing and also feel like she's getting paid for it, because that's how you get rid of it feeling like a bit of a slog, don't you think?
Oh yeah, and I can absolutely vouch for your passion. Not that you need our testimony, but yeah, I mean, we kind of connected through an accident on LinkedIn, didn't we? You and Saskia, mainly through Tarek's little biscuit that sparked your interest, and yeah, the amount of support you've given us since has been amazing. So yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. But I think the reason why I supported it was kind of selfish, because it was a good way of me showing yet again another way to do this properly. And I think being bothered to go first with giving a gift and sharing something of value, as you two did, it's rare, because most people say, hey, if you want me, I might be able to help you. Whereas what you do is you say, here's a sample of how great we are. And people go, wow, this is brilliant. I'd now, that's a really wonderful way to warm a lead, if you like. And what you've done really well is tapped into the power of network effect, which is, I was connected to Tarek. He received one of your biscuits through his firm. And I was like, well, I want one. So, because I'm bold enough to ask. And then, it wasn't long after that, and you two attended my London event, Entrepreneur Business Live, the charity networking event, and you were there armed with biscuits, and rightly so, because they're lovely, and everyone loved it. And it's the little things, I think, that you two get right that a lot of people can learn from, rather than here's some biscuits, who wants a biscuit? It's okay, each member of the panel, let's personalize some biscuits. And it does go a little bit, into your time, and you have to put a bit more effort into that kind of thing. But that's how you get remembered. And one thing I know is if you get in touch with content creators and, you know, personalize something for them, they tend to want to shout about that. And so you've probably got a bunch of posts and a lot of interest as a result.
I mean, the funny thing is, Richard, that we never read any books about this stuff. Like, we did it truly, genuinely from the kindness of our heart. Like, it wasn't a marketing strategy. So it was funny when you picked it up as such, and it was like, okay, right. Because we just did it, and it worked for us. But it's not because we read, you know, this famous book of this person who says.
I want to pick on this point. This is a really important point you're making, because a lot of marketing books and courses and so on, ultimately, when you reduce them down, they actually teach people to return to obvious human values. And the problem is that people need that because they tend to approach things a bit weird. They don't take cues from the natural human offline world on how we should interact with people in a social environment. Instead, they go a bit weird and like, well, I need that person to buy from me. Hi, do you want to buy from me? And it's like, that's not how humans work. So what you're doing is by leaning into your values, you actually are being very human. And the irony of the whole thing is that's how you should do it. And if you get very high-end degrees in this space, and if you read all the books on this kind of thing, they all ultimately come down to, you know, being grateful and giving first and being warm and welcoming and not trying to game someone that you're going to ultimately sell to. And it's just quite ironic that you don't need that. You just have to be built the right way. And so, you know, you tend to get what you deserve, you know, and if you give a lot, karma tends to help you in the long run.
And is that, I'm curious, the people that you work with and that come to you, is that message jarring to them? Is it confusing to them that is actually how it works?
It's sometimes it's annoying for them, because what they want is, if I just write this line every single time, does it convert? And like, what's the quick way though? I don't want to do the whole engaging with individuals. I can't be bothered with that. And it's like, but you want them to spend thousands of quid every month with you. You have to put out a bit first. And so it is a bit jarring for some, because they're like, but I don't want to hear that, Richard. I want the advice to be just do these easy things and then money will just come in. But it's simple, but it's not easy, because you actually have to care a bit, and you have to want to be present around the people who are ultimately you're hoping are going to want to be around you. So it is a two-way thing, and those that can be bothered to invest in the individuals, and as in the relationships with the individuals that they'll work with, they tend to get what they deserve out of it. Those who are shallow rather than deep tend to get very, very few results, you find.
Reminds me of the John Qureshi quote that success is paid in advance and in full. Sounds like you have to go all in, and then eventually it might take a while to reap the reward, rather than throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks.
And look, it's hard, because sometimes we're like, what? I mean, it must be for you too at times. You must be thinking, we just keep giving so much. Like, are we getting anything back? But you do after a while, and it may not be in the form of a transaction. It may be in the form of an extra bit of credit in the reputation, for instance. And I'll be fully transparent. The now 32 events I've run, these networking events around the world, all the money that I generate through tickets goes to charity. So I literally don't make any money directly off the event. But of course, in that kind of sharing that, I would like to think, slightly more wholesome value, you tend to find that, you know, people start seeing you in the right way. And that all underpins a more commercially led decision to buy from you. And so it's important to not just share what you're good at, but also share it in a way that shows your values too. Because if you do that and people think, do you know what, you know, I actually might want to buy from this person. So it's rare that I run an event and don't make money directly off it and get clients because they're in the room and they're seeing me in the right light. You know what I mean? So I think it's really important to bear that in mind. And, you know, giving first goes a long way. I totally agree with that.
And how does gratitude show up in your business and in your everyday life?
So I'm in my 40s now, and it's interesting because as you go through your life, I think it's the same for everyone. Stuff will happen to you, especially when you're an adult. You know, you have some bad times and so on as well. And I'm really just generally feel really good about who I am and where I'm going and the life I have. And I think because just from personal experiences in the past, there's been a lot of loss for me personally. I've moved to a place where like I really do recognize that the little things I do each day in my life are actually what life is. I need to enjoy those. So yesterday I spent the day in the garden just chilling with the family, and you know it was sunny and our little puppy dogs running around, and it wasn't like I wasn't skydiving and I wasn't in the Maldives, but they're the little things that really make it wonderful. And before this call, I was just going for a little stroll around the garden because I need to take the dog out before I'm on the call for an hour. And I just think, you know, being able to do that when, especially through contrast, because in my former life I was pinned to a desk in my office work. It's really nice to think, you know what, this is a good way of saying to yourself, you have it all, even if culturally we think having it all means owning a plane and a Ferrari and a big mansion. That's not necessarily how it is. It's the things you do in the day. So gratitude permeates from the word go, and I really try and be conscious of it. That's just a lot of good coaches I've worked with, therapy in the past and so on, and being very conscious of what I have as a life. And I think it's those little things. So getting up this morning and going into my little gym and doing a workout, and then being able to make a coffee and sit at the dining room table and chill on the laptop and do a little bit of work whilst I watch people going to the city, walking past the station. It just really matters to me that I can say, not that I'm doing it so much that I can recognize doing it and say, hey, this is good, this is for you. And that's something that's really important. So I like that. And I like to also start with this sense of what gratitude is for me through what I'm doing with my work too. And that's why I run these events, because after a while you kind of, when you're doing well, then you just think to yourself, well, is it cool to put it all in your back pocket? And there's something really amazing about helping charities around the world with some money. I don't give them millions, but I give them a bit. And it's just nice to have that kind of bit of philanthropy as well. So I feel like I'm a good guy and giving back, because I am incredibly lucky to live in this time and this country with this education and all that kind of thing. And I think, you know, you can do really well, but it's nice. I think giving back tends to yield you a lot, at the very least, just in terms of feeling good about yourself, you know. So I don't know if that articulates it well enough. It's not so much ego. It's much more just kind of feeling well-being, a sense of well-being, and that I'm doing good beyond just my own bank account, if you know what I mean. I think that's where we all want to move to eventually. I think deep down we do like the idea of an impact beyond just ourselves. But what's important in terms of business advice is that when people are starting, they do actually try and serve themselves directly, because you're much more used to people in the future if you can at least, you know, help yourself to begin with, and then take it from there. So I don't know. I don't talk about gratitude too much, but I do my best to experience it and look at the little things, as I've tried to explain, rather than you know, all of the big noteworthy Instagram-y kind of experiences. I'm much more they're great and I appreciate them, but it's the things each day, the little things, like you know, it's early afternoon on a Monday and we're doing this, as opposed to I'm not in a meeting anymore with a spreadsheet in front of me of deal pipeline and trying to get that over the line. And you see what I mean? So I'm really grateful that I can do this kind of thing as well, and that we might be able to help people who are listening to this.
And I think what you say is so correct as well, in the sense, you know, society will want to have you think that at every stage of your life you need to be somewhere else. So if you are in a back-to-back, living on a minimum wage, you want to live in the terraced house, you know, with an average person's salary. And once you're there, you know, you're not content, because your eyesight is on the next level. And when you're on the next level, it's on the next level. And it's never when really I think what everybody wants is contentment.
Yes.
And to be just, it's okay, I'm here, and my children are around me if you have them. If not, then, you know, whichever other loved ones are around you, and to just be, I guess, you know.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to, it can coexist with ambition. And I think it's really important people understand that, because they think being content is the same as settling. And I know I'm very ambitious and want to do great things and don't feel I'm quite there yet. But what it is being conscious of where you are at the same at this particular moment. So you're absolutely right. And, you know, I mean, I was really exhausted at the weekend because I'd been to Valencia and done 2 talks and a session within 24 hours and come back home again, literally like non-stop. But saying to yourself, look at what you get to do, and being happy that someone had decided to pay for me to be out there. It was a really great experience. And I just think it's important to try and see the good in things. And that's just a good way to live your life, to be honest, in general.
What has shaped you to become the person you are today, to be able to see things the way you see things?
Yes, a really big question. There's a lot of things. And it's interesting that if you look back through your life, you see a lot of things, you think it almost looks like it's all fitted together neatly to get you to where you are now, but it was definitely like all over the place to get here. And I think there's a number of big influences on getting me the particular point of view I have of things and where I am now. And, you know, like my mother, who was very focused on driving her children to be successful and things like that, and that really is something she got behind us with. And she was a single mum who couldn't drive, who had a part-time job, and she put us all through university. So at the time, going to university was seen as something you should try and do. It's definitely different now. But it was interesting that, like, her stoicism, her lack of complaining, at least outwardly, is really important in terms of how I look at things. I don't complain if it's raining, because there are some things you can't affect. And I think she's impacted me a lot. And sadly, when she died about 10 years ago, you know, there was a lot that was lost on my side, because I didn't have that person who believed in me and pushed me and was a really good example of being grateful for what they had. But in losing someone so dear, you often find that that's very powerful, because it makes you realize that some things aren't going to be forever. And she was also, in passing at around 60 years old, it was a really good example of how you shouldn't be, as you said, Saskia, you shouldn't be always looking to the future too much, because, you know, she just was about to touch retirement. She'd worked all her life to put her children through university and pay off her house. And I remember about a year or so prior to her passing away, she just paid off her mortgage. And so it was like, I'm just about ready. And sadly, she passed away. So you can't put things like that off, because you never know when things are going to be snatched away from you. So it might not be something as horrible as death. It might be just you're losing faculties, or you're compromised in some other way. So it is very much more like, yes, looking to the present. I learned a lot from that period to not just look at the future, rather is to look at the present too, and say, like, if this was it, is this me doing it right? And so you can understand how, you know, a year or so later, it made a lot of sense to me to exit the 80-hour weeks in the city. My first daughter had just been born. And by the way, she'd been born without an esophagus. So I spent that whole year with my mother passing away and my daughter in operations, having her food pipe made, with all of the complications. So a lot of things were happening. And I was like, I just need to, obviously at the time it was all very dark, but as you emerge from that, move to a place where it's like, I need to kind of make the most of what I do have, because I did lose my mum, but I've got this wonderful daughter. And so it was like, it was really a good impetus for me to say, let's leave the city, but let's make the most of what I do have and make it all happen. And I remember very distinctly at that time saying to myself, let's design a week that you want to be in. So let's not have the Sunday evening, oh great, I've got to go to work tomorrow thing. What would a Monday need to look like? And how do I get to be in a place where I'm not reintroducing myself to my own child every weekend? How can I instead take it to, like, you know, being really part of this child's upbringing and in all the right ways, you know? So I worked very hard, and many people were actually telling me I was being irresponsible by leaving the job. But, you know, you should leave with what's going to make you happier, and I, even not even happy so much as content, as you rightly said, because it does go certainly a very long way to being the right kind of foundation to build something you love. You know, so things like that made a big influence on me. Business-wise, really worth sharing is that 20 years ago, I was just finishing my master's, and I was getting ready for my PhD. The master's was like the first chapter of it. Around this time of the year, I applied for my funding, and I didn't get it. So I was like, hang on, what? This wasn't what was planned. I was meant to be in academia, and I wanted to wear a cardigan and write books and lecture and probably get the leather arm patches, which is law, I think, for all history professors to wear. But I thought it didn't happen. So I was like, my mum at the time said, so you know, you're not coming home. You have to go get a job. I was like, okay, fine. So the first job I took was selling internet marketing in 2003. And you think about sliding doors moments. It was literally just the first thing I applied for, and I just took the job. And it could have been anything. I just went for that. And it was so perfectly aligned with where the world is now. It helped me with selling. It helped me understanding the online component of things. So I'm very grateful that something happened and fate decided that I would become relevant through the work I was doing then. So, yeah, so there's a big answer for you, but there's a couple of monumental moments for me. Not going to academia especially is what drove me in this direction, and suddenly 20 years have passed. It's kind of crazy. It really is.
And I feel you're also, like I said in my LinkedIn post yesterday, like you post every single day, mostly around this topic. Every single post of yours is just supremely interesting and thought-provoking.
Thank you.
And I feel you have a really good grasp on human psychology as well. Is that innate to you, or is that because of so much sales and meeting so many people?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'd love to think it was innate. Good news for everyone is it certainly isn't. And if you go back, let's talk 30 years ago, or even just 25 years ago, I was incredibly shy, very backward socially, and it took me a long time to come out of my shell. I've always been quite the introvert in that I like being by myself. My own company is wonderful, and I'm quite content there. And no, so it wasn't really natural for me. I was the guy that when I was like 16 and everyone's going night clubbing, I was like coding and building a computer, and like the thought of dating was like a million light years away. So I was very, very like slow in the uptake in that regard. But I do think I think it was probably the selling that helped me a lot, because I was taught not to quit despite what you've taken on. I made the bed of having this job, so I had to lie in it, right? And so it's hard cold calling someone you don't know and asking them for a load of money. You have to get good really quick, otherwise it's a horrible existence. And it was quite abusive at times, because it was really hard work to do that. But I think purely the exposure to thousands and thousands of interactions, it gets you places, and it makes you really understand what makes a human work and what doesn't. But also I when it started going well, I really started trying to crack it. I enjoyed this process of the problem, or the nut I'm trying to crack is how to get someone from zero to like what wording tends to work over and over again. And I was fortunate in a way that my job was one where all day, every day, I didn't have to do anything except speak to people over and over again and test and test and test. And so, you know, that's 10 years I was managing and sales director and so on, but in any guise I was working, it was always about meetings and I think that just simply helped me a lot. plus that when I was in my 20s in London, I was starting to come out of my shell because of the job, and so I was going out and meeting people more and things like that. So I just think it was the kind of world I was in that helped me a lot. And I think, fortunately, with the online component, I can also be in a very natural state that I can be by myself in this introvert world and still be out there with people too. So I just find I'm always still this student. I've kind of got this academic mind. It's just how I like to be. So there may be some hints in this video that I'm quite into reading, and I do think that I'm just constantly attacking like how people think and why and behavior and stuff like that. And I find it quite fascinating. So my roots and the work I do now, the coaching and so on, taps into that and requires me to learn even more. And I'm constantly discussing these kind of things, and so it does help me have a fairly good grasp of like thinking about me.
And how much of your journey was planned? Because it sounds like there were a lot of happy accidents or just things happen for you and you took them head on rather than going, oh no, I'm introverted, I can't be a salesperson. How much of that was planned and how much was just happening for you?
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is that when things happen, I've made a point of working with it and adapting and working well, rather than maybe if I go in this direction, this thing will happen. So I think I wasn't steering into any form of success or things going well to begin with. It was, if things happened to me, I managed them and dealt with them well. But as I got older and certainly as I built my business, if I go back, say 5-6 years or so, I definitely started to get the knack of steering into success. And I had a constant dialogue with myself of, what are you doing right now? How does that map to you being better and positioned well and helping your business and so on? And if it's not, well, why are you doing it? And so I work a lot, but at the same time, I'm also very efficient with it. So I don't scroll a lot on Instagram, and I've killed off any kind of social channels I feel are kind of sapping my time. And I make a point of not going down rabbit holes too much online. I just think it's important to be doing things that are effective. You know, is that Pareto efficiency rule of 80-20, and I'm always trying to be in that area of tasks that make a difference. So I think that answers your question, but it matters to me to make sure I'm being effective with things when they come up. But I think as you get a bit more experience with things, you do tend to have a sense of what you stand for and what you're trying to achieve, and that helps you to make better decisions as you go along, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm seeing that it's 28 minutes, so I don't want to keep you for too long. So definitely want to ask you if there is anybody that you can name, someone that you've met, someone that you haven't met, who you are grateful for the guidance, wisdom, anything that they've given you in life. Who would that person be?
That's a really hard one. And I'm going to go back over old ground. I really think it's my mother. She was kind of, and this is going to sound weird because like if people asked me years ago who my hero was, it would have been my mum. It's no longer the case. My hero now is me, which sounds really egotistical, but the hero's me because I'm trying to be a person that I am happy being with. And so I think I'm cheerleading myself, if that makes sense. But it really was my mum, because she went through a lot of adversity and she never complained. And I think that's like the start point, was she never moaned about stuff. She wasn't necessarily skipping through meadows in gratitude because she had a lot of hard times to deal with. But it really shaped me being around someone like that. And it was hard at times because she famously never used to say, do your best. She would always say, be the best, which does set you up for a fall if you aren't. But she pushed for excellence. And I think it was a nice thing. And if you look at my two sisters, I'm incredibly proud of how successful they've been as well in their roles in the city. And one's now over in San Francisco. And it's all come from this kind of drive to try and be excellent at whatever it is you choose to do. And so that means a lot to me. And yeah, so I think she's probably, I don't know if that's the answer you expected. Someone might be like, this influencer, but that's the way I view it. Because someone you might look up to as an influencer, they tend to come and go a bit, don't they?
Yeah, and they also show you one particular part of their life, which might not even be true.
Quite right, exactly. That's a whole other discussion. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for your time,
Very welcome.
your wisdom. Yeah, it's always nice to hear you speak.
Thank you. And hopefully if I'm hoping for a Manchester event in the future. So up in the north with you lot, I can get to say hi again. And I mean, ultimately it's just about having biscuits, but you're the
There's easier ways to get
necessary evil to go run an event, but there we are. But yeah, thank you so much though. And hopefully we can talk more in the future and share more ideas.
Yes.
Thanks for your time, Richard. Really
You're very welcome. Thanks also, Lisa.
Take care.
Bye-bye.